Story time about how I tricked my ex into paying for all of my plastic surgery. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. A little backstory. I met my ex at the gym. He was actually my personal trainer. He was in really good shape while I was definitely out of shape and pudgy. He motivated me to work out and lose weight. I quickly realized I had a major crush on him. So after a full year of training, I had lost about 30 pounds. I felt really good about myself. So I mustered up the courage to tell him that I had a crush on him. But unfortunately, he told me that he never dated clients. Then he said that we still had a lot of work to do on my body anyway. It was a punch to the gut. I decided I needed to get a new trainer because of what he said and because obviously I had a crush on him. Well, it just so happens that I landed in my dream job. I started making a lot of money. He followed me on Instagram and he started noticing it. I moved into a better apartment and I got a new car. I also got lip filler and cheek filler. That's when he calls me up and asked me on a date. I said yes right away. You'll never guess what happened next. Part 2 is up. Once he saw I had money, he asked me out on a date. I had been crushing on him for more than a year, so I said yes. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. We set up a date and it went really well. He paid for dinner and congratulated me on all my success. After that, we started hanging out almost every single weekend. And about a month later, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I was so happy. I had my dream job, I lost weight, I looked damn good. And I got the perfect boyfriend too. But this is when he got toxic. He would start to criticize little things about my body. For example, I had a little bit of fat on my stomach and he would point that out. Or he would point out that my boobs weren't that big. And like I said in part 1, he was a trainer, so he had abs. Made me feel self-conscious, so I never got undressed in front of him. Then one day he suggested I go to a plastic surgeon. He even looked up a few in my area. Part 3 is up. My boyfriend actually suggested I go to a plastic surgeon because he didn't like that my boobs were small and that I had a bit of a tummy. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I got extremely offended, of course. Then he acted like what he said was completely normal. I told him that I love my body as it was. Then he said that I still needed to do a lot of work on it. Then he insinuated that his girlfriend needs to look just as good as he does. In other words, he thought he was better looking than me. So I thought to myself, okay, sure, let's go to this plastic surgeon. But I was gonna find a way to make him pay for it. You see, at this point I was paying for a lot. I would pay for our dates and dinners. He would even sometimes ask me for gas money. We went to the plastic surgeon and I decided to get my boobies done. So I told my boyfriend that all my money was tied up in investments, that I needed him to loan me the money. He said, yeah, sure, and he transferred the money. I got the plastic surgery and it looks amazing. I've since moved to another city, blocked him on my phone and on social media, and he hasn't been able to find me. I mean, I think he kind of deserved it, but I also feel guilty. What should I do? Story time about how I came out as gay to my husband. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm 27 years old, and when I was in high school, I knew that I like girls. In fact, I pretty much only dated girls throughout all of my high school. I did also date guys. My parents were totally accepting of this, by the way. Growing up, I always knew that I wanted to marry a man so that I could have kids. When I got into college, I started dating this girl. Her and I dated for a couple of weeks, and she introduced me to my now husband. So he and I started hooking up behind her back, and she eventually found out and she broke up with me. Fast forward a few years later, and we're married. But here's the problem. I found myself only being attracted to women, and I was definitely not attracted to my husband. Obviously, this became a huge problem in the relationship. So guess what my husband did? He hired an escort to come spend some time with us, if you know what I mean. This was great, but I basically only wanted to be with the escort, not my husband. A few weeks later, the escort and I actually started dating. So bad, I know. My husband had no idea. And this escort actually asked me to be her girlfriend. Part 2 is up. So the escort and I started dating behind my husband's back. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Like, her and I were in a full-blown relationship. Mind you, I'm a woman. Mind you, my husband doesn't know that I like women only. This went on for a few months. I was living a total lie. My husband would go to work. Since I work from home, I would go to my escort girlfriend's apartment and spend the day with her. I even took a toothbrush and some clothes. One day, my girlfriend and I decided to go watch a movie. We're standing in line to buy popcorn, and of course, we're kissing and holding hands. This is when one of my husband's employees comes up to me, taps my shoulder, and says hi. But she acted like she didn't see anything. Like she was just coming up to me and saying hi. I could tell that something was off. I mean, she saw me kissing this girl. That's when the guilt started getting to me. I could no longer lie to my husband. I knew I had to come out to him. That same night, I talked to my husband. I confessed everything and told him that I really liked women only. That's when he tells me that he knew about the relationship this whole time. That he knew I only liked women. Part 3 is up. My husband tells me that he knew I was having an affair this whole time. That he also knew that I only liked women. Claiming this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when my husband tells me that it's okay. Because he can deal with me having this affair. Because he didn't want anyone to know that he was married to someone that liked women. He told me he'd rather stay married, have kids with me, and basically live a lie. I also forgot to mention my husband's a really wealthy guy. He offered me a lot of money to stay with him and have kids. Last week, I got a letter from his lawyer. It was a contract basically saying that if I stay with him and have his kids, he'll pay me a very large amount of money. But here's the thing. I've fallen in love with my escort girlfriend. She thinks I'm gonna divorce my husband to be with her. But my husband thinks that I'm gonna sign this contract and have his kids. Even my mother-in-law is getting involved. She's begging me to sign the contract and have the kids. Never thought I'd have to choose between love and money. A few days ago, my escort girlfriend actually asked me to move in with her. I told my husband, he said no. What should I do? Storytime about how I escaped my abusive husband. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. It was sent to me on Instagram. My soon-to-be ex-husband is the most toxic person I've ever met in my entire life. We've been married for almost 3 years. We got married after 4 months of being boyfriend and girlfriend. And to be honest, no, we really didn't know each other. At the beginning, he was totally kind, generous, and really, really fun. We were always going to parties and we had so many friends. Here's where things started getting scary. He never posted me on his Instagram. In fact, he rarely ever posted on his Instagram at all. I'm very active on social media. I'm constantly posting pictures of us together. The fact that he never posted me on his social media made me think that maybe he was trying to look for other girls. But then I found out the truth. One day I get a DM from this girl, and she told me how my boyfriend had abused her in the past. She even had to get a restraining order. She basically told me she wanted to warn me about him. I didn't respond to her message because I wanted to ask him first. I showed him the messages later on that day, and he went nuts. He punched the wall, and he slapped me straight across the face. Part 2 is up. He slapped me straight across the face and I fell to the ground. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. When he saw what he'd done, he started apologizing right away. Then he said that the girl who contacted me on Instagram to warn me about him was just his stalker, and that he had broken up with this girl but she couldn't get over him. At the time, we weren't living together, so I went back to my mom's place. I didn't speak to him for a few days. Then he started coming over to my mom's house every single day with flowers, apologizing and begging me back. Unfortunately, I decided to forgive him. 2 weeks later, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. I posted a picture of my engagement ring on Instagram, and that's when I got another message from another girl. She told me that my boyfriend was abusive and that she also had to get a restraining order. I didn't know who to believe. I went to my mother-in-law's house and I asked her what had happened. And she basically told me that he has issues with his temper. I asked her if what the girl said was true, and she said it wasn't her business to say. A few weeks later, we got married. And that's when the real torture started. He became super controlling and mean. And when I wouldn't do something he wanted, would lock me in my room for hours. Part 3. My husband would lock me in the bedroom for hours. But then it got worse. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. It got to the point that whenever he would get mad, he would either push me, shake me, or slap me. This went on for a year, but I always hoped that he would just change. After 2 years, I decided to get in contact with the women who said they got restraining orders against my husband. Met up with both of them at a cafe to lie to my husband and say that I was going to be late at work. They brought all their receipts. They had pictures and text messages, emails, and police reports. Couldn't believe it. I mean, I could, but at the same time I couldn't, you know? If I had just paid attention to these girls before we got married, none of this would have happened. But these girls knew exactly what I was going through. So we hatched a plan of how I would escape my abusive husband. At this point, he controlled everything, my cell phone and my bank account. By the way, I hadn't told my mom anything at this point. When I asked her for money and I told her why, she was shocked. The plan would be that I was going to escape at night. I waited for Friday because I knew he'd go out with his friends to drink. I called an Uber, but a few minutes later, my husband shows up at our door. Part 4 is up. The night I was planning to escape my abusive husband, I called an Uber to the house, but my husband showed up 2 minutes later. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. As soon as he walks in through the door, he was totally drunk. That's when he told me that he was hungry. I pretended that everything was normal and that I didn't have an Uber coming to save me. I went to the kitchen, I made him a sandwich as quickly as I could. I came back out, took one bite, and started falling asleep. Thank God. I hid in my backpack behind a curtain, slowly grabbed the backpack and my shoes, and that's when my cell phone notified me that the Uber was there. I was terrorized at this point because I was hoping the noise from the cell phone didn't wake him up. I turned around, but he was totally passed out. I ran barefoot to the Uber, got in, and told him to drive away. Went straight to a friend's house and turned off my phone. Next day, I went straight to a lawyer to file for divorce. I had text messages and pictures. I also went to the police and they said that I can't file a restraining order yet. My husband, of course, is already looking for me. He went to my mom's house, but she didn't let him in. But here's the problem. I already miss him. He sent me an email apologizing, swearing that it won't happen again. My gut's telling me not to go back. What do you guys think? Story time about how I found out my husband was receiving naked pictures from a famous influencer. My husband started getting noticed on YouTube a few years ago. Ever since then, he thinks he's a stupid influencer. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. And let me just say, my husband is so stupid. He is literally like the dumbest person I've ever met. We dated for 2 months before he asked me to marry him, and unfortunately, I said yes. A few months after we got married, his YouTube channel started taking off, and he started acting like he was a stupid celebrity. He hired a publicist. He got himself invited to stupid influencer events. He even tried to get a Hollywood agent. God, he's so stupid. Around this time, he started meeting a lot of influencers, both guys and girls. He was also growing on Instagram. He was always on Instagram. He's so dumb that he wrote all of his passwords in a piece of paper, and it was in my nightstand. So of course, I logged into his Instagram. As soon as I open his DMs, I see naked pictures from a very famous influencer. He was sending her pictures too. Part 2 is up. I open his DMs and I see a famous influencer send him naked pictures. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I started scrolling through the whole conversation with this famous influencer. She had sent him like 15 or more naked pictures. And like I said in part 2, he was sending her pictures too. But his were the ones that disappear after you open them. So maybe he's not so stupid. I took screenshots and saved them on my phone. Then I scrolled through the rest of his DMs. And holy moly, there were other influencers who were sending him pictures. Not all of them were naked pictures. Mind you, all of these influencers knew he was married. I was extremely furious, but I knew I had to keep my head cool. By the way, have you guessed who he is? So here's what I did. I took a stupid little play button from YouTube, and I threw it in a dumpster. Then I turned on the fireplace and put all of his clothes. And I took his passport and ripped all the pages out. You won't believe what happens next. Part 3 is up. After I burnt all of my YouTuber husband's clothes, I took all the naked pictures that the influencer sent him, and I sent them to her management. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I wrote to her management and explained what happened. I told them that if they didn't stop working with her, I would send the pictures to TMZ. And just like I expected, within minutes I got a reply. They begged me to delete the pictures. And they offered me $20,000 to keep my mouth shut. Of course, I said no. And that's when my husband comes home. He sees all of his clothes that I burnt. God, the look on his face was so stupid. I showed him all of my receipts. Then he confessed that he only did the dirty with her once. I literally thought they had just sent pictures to each other. And his phone rings. Guess who it is? It's the damn influencer. She goes off on him and tells him that I'm threatening her career and that how could he be so stupid to not delete the pictures. They haven't spoken since. I still don't know what to do. Did I send the pictures to TMZ? I already filed for divorce too. I want all his money. Story time about how I got a facelift when I was 18 to become a famous Instagram model. And I am a famous Instagram model. Can you guess who I am? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I grew up in the Kylie Jenner era when she started getting her lips done. Remember that? Kardashians were a Bible to me. I watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians and was totally obsessed with their looks. You see, at the time, I wasn't the prettiest girl. I was really skinny. I had no bum and no boobalas. Once Kylie Jenner started getting her body done, that's when I really started getting FOMO. To be honest, and I know this sounds cliche, but social media made me start hating my face. I would constantly compare myself to Instagram models. That's when I started photoshopping my pictures. It made me feel so much better to post. Then I begged my parents for lip fillers. They finally said yes and I went ahead and got them. For me, the next logical thing was to look like Kylie Jenner. So I decided my parents to let me get surgery. They finally said yes, but trust me, it took a long time to convince them. We went to a plastic surgeon, and that's when I decided to get a full facelift. I know it sounds severe, but it was so worth it. But I didn't stop just at my face. I even convinced my parents to get my boobalas and my bum done. Part 2 is after getting all my plastic surgery at 18, I finally became a famous Instagram model. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. The healing process, of course, was painful, but it was so worth it to me. Once I saw my body and my face, I felt so much better about myself. But something else was missing. Everyone on Instagram was getting their brows tattooed and lash extensions. So I went ahead and got those things done too. And I started paying back my parents for all the surgeries. So this was my basic beauty routine. I would get a mani-pedi every 2 weeks. I would get my hair colored every single month. I was getting lip fillers every 6 months. Facials every 2 weeks. Personal trainer who I exercise with 5 times a week. And I forgot to mention, I had 100,000 followers on Instagram at this point. So I was getting a lot of brand deals aside from the modeling. That's when I started noticing that Kylie Jenner's butt was looking bigger, so I wanted to get mine bigger. I also wanted to get my hips wider like her too. I even started buying all the designer stuff that Kylie was wearing too. Part 3 is up. I asked my plastic surgeon to make my butt look bigger like Kylie's. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. By the way, at this point, I'd already had a full facelift and lots of body work done by the time I was 18. My plastic surgeon told me he wouldn't give me another round of butt filler. I was really upset. Then my parents asked me to come over. When I got to their house, they told me the plastic surgeon had called their house and told them that I was looking for more surgery. My parents were beginning to worry, but I assured them that everything was okay. I was not addicted to plastic surgery or anything like that. I just knew how competitive the modeling industry was. Instead, I decided to get filler in my face. I got my nose and my cheeks done. And that's when I started getting hired by more makeup companies. After a year, my Instagram following went from 100,000 to 1 million. I've modeled for over 50 brands and I'm currently planning my own brand. My Instagram followers are constantly accusing me of getting plastic surgery, but I've never admitted to anything. I'll come back to the comments and see if anybody guess who I am. I know people hate Instagram models because they never admit to it, but I will never admit to my plastic surgery. I mean, I'll probably have plastic surgery again. Have you guessed who I am? Story time about how I just found out I'm pregnant and I don't know if it's my boyfriend's or my sugar daddy's. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, it's not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for a while and everything's been okay, but we're both pretty broke. He doesn't earn a lot of money and I'm usually the one paying for a lot of stuff, but he always tries to chip in on everything. I started modeling a few years ago, but things stopped because of COVID. By the way, I live in LA and a lot of my friends are sugar babies. All of them are Instagram models and influencers, and they know so many rich guys. So I reached out to one of my friends who is a very famous influencer, and I asked her if she could set me up with a sugar daddy. I know I have a boyfriend, but I've been struggling and I just can't pay the bills anymore. She got me a date with this older gentleman who was actually pretty nice. We went out on a few dates and he basically told me what he wanted from me. I agreed to everything. A few months passed by and he asked me to marry him. Of course I had to say no. See, I still love my boyfriend. And I just found out I'm pregnant. Part 2 is I took a pregnancy test and it came out positive. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. And that's when it hit me. I didn't know if it was my boyfriend's or my sugar daddy's. I had been seeing my sugar daddy for about 3 months at that point. So I went to the doctor to find out how far along I was. And sure enough, I was 2 months pregnant. By the way, my boyfriend had no idea I had a sugar daddy, but he also wasn't asking where all the money was coming from to pay our bills. Remember my influencer friend who got me my sugar daddy? She told me to just tell my sugar daddy that the baby was his. That way I could ensure the baby's financial future. I felt really bad saying that since I didn't know if it was his baby. So here's what I did. I told my boyfriend, and then I told my sugar daddy. My boyfriend freaked out and told me to unalive the baby, if you know what I mean. And my sugar daddy asked me to marry him again. After that, my sugar daddy bought me a car, and he opened up a joint account between the two of us so I have access to a lot of money. My boyfriend's just mad all the time now. My sugar daddy's being so sweet. Part 3 is up. So now that my sugar daddy gave me a lot of money, disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram, I kind of want to break up with my boyfriend and be with my sugar daddy. My boyfriend is always angry because of the pregnancy, but my sugar daddy is totally supportive. Because I wanted to break up with my boyfriend, I started looking through his phone just to see if I could find anything. You know, like an excuse to break up with him. And guess what I found in his DMs? He had been messaging a ton of girls for like 6 months. I went through every single conversation, and there were about 15. Some of them are even the influencer girls who I said were my friends. I guess they're not really my friends. A week ago, I found everything, and my boyfriend said that he was unhappy in the relationship and that's why he had done it. But now he's saying he wants the baby and that's why we should stay together. But my sugar daddy is being so sweet and he's so excited for the baby. What do you guys think I should do? I definitely think I should break up with my boyfriend, but what if the baby isn't my sugar daddy's? What do I do? Story time about how I came out as bi to my parents. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. By the time I was 12 years old, I definitely knew I was bi. By the time I was 14, I'd already had a girlfriend and a boyfriend, but my parents did not know any of this. When I was 15, I even had a girlfriend for a full year. She would come around the house and I would say that she was my friend. But one day my mom walks in on me and my friend making out on the bed without our shirts on. My mom was so horrified that she actually ran out of the room. Later, I explained to her that we were just playing a game and that it was popular at school. I basically convinced her that I was not bi. Or at least I thought I did. Later on that day, my dad comes to my room and basically asked me if I liked girls. I swore up and down that I didn't. Then when I was 16, I found myself having 2 girlfriends, don't ask me how. Again, they would each come over and I would just say they were my friends. I thought I was home alone, so I invited my girlfriend over. We start fooling around and that's when my door opens. My dad is looking at me getting it on with another girl. Part 2 is up. My dad walks in on me while I was fooling around with the girl in bed. Mind you, I'm a girl. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. Keep in mind, I had half of my clothes on. My dad literally picked me up from the bed and threw me out of my room. Then he kicked my girlfriend out. It was definitely traumatizing. My dad called my mom and told her to rush home. They interrogated me for 3 hours. I told them I'd had girlfriends and boyfriends. They were more than shocked. They finally calmed down and I was able to go to sleep. 2 days later, my dad tells me to pack my suitcase. I asked him why, but he wouldn't tell me. Then he drove me to a camp that promises to help your children who are bi. Instead of being afraid, I told my dad that I would try my best. I lasted about 2 days there. They basically made us do Bible study, and I was made to feel like a perv. So I packed my little suitcase and I left. So of course, I packed my suitcase, climbed 2 walls, and I was free. That's when I heard a really scary alarm. Part 3 is up. I thought I was free, but then I hear an alarm sound. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I started running and I got to a main road. Luckily, a bus was pulling up right on time. I get on the bus and I go straight to my girlfriend's house, which was about 2 hours away. That means they would have already told my parents I had escaped. Well, when I get to my girlfriend's house, my parents are already there. But guess what? My parents weren't there to pick me up. They were there to drop off all of my things. Yep, that's right. They kicked me out of the house. Thankfully, my girlfriend's family were super cool and they let me live with them. When I turned 18, I got an apartment and a roommate. My entire family stopped talking to me. It's been 4 years since I last saw my parents. I recently got hired at my dream job, so I went to my parents' house and I told them. I also came out to them properly. At least this time I was not yelled at. I speak to my mom on the phone every now and then, but I feel like I should talk to my dad again. What do you guys think? I just want them to accept me. Story time about how my boyfriend caught me cheating on him with his best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend is a total asshole. He's super controlling and jealous. If we ever go to parties, he never lets me out of his sight. And if I ever get hit on, he always blames it on me and tells me that I'm an attention seeker. He even tells me that I'm lucky he hasn't broken up with me because I have cellulite. He's always showing me pictures of other girls on Instagram and tells me that I need to work out so that I can look like them. We've been together for almost exactly a year, but recently I decided that I wanted to break up with him. The only part is I don't know how to do it because he has such a short temper. Well, his best friend, let's call him John. John is super nice and kind. He's super easygoing and makes fun of my boyfriend whenever he gets jealous. I recently opened up to John and asked him how I should do it. He basically told me to just get it over with. Well, 2 weeks ago, we all went to a birthday party. I got extremely drunk. As always, my boyfriend was being an asshole. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed John's hand and I took him to the bathroom. I locked us in there and we started making out. And my boyfriend literally breaks down the door. My boyfriend breaks down the door and finds me and his best friend in the bathroom shirtless. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend grabs John by the collar and throws him on the floor. Then they start punching each other. I put my shirt back on and several other people started trying to break up the fight. When they finally separated, I told my boyfriend that I didn't want to be with him and that I was breaking up with him. And he grabbed my arm really hard, pulled me out of the party and put me in his car. He started punching his steering wheel and I told him to calm down. That's when he tells me that I can't break up with him and that I'll never find anyone better. He drove me to my house and on the way he was interrogating me. I told him he was too jealous, controlling, and that he made made me feel terrible about myself. Then he told me that that's how he shows his love. Then I told him it was over again. He said the only reason I was breaking up with him was because I was drunk. When he finally left my house, I called John to apologize for everything. That's when John told me my boyfriend had been cheating on me for months, and that he actually got a girl pregnant. And worst of all, I knew the girl. Part 3 is up. I knew the girl that my boyfriend had gotten pregnant. I also knew where she lived, so I got in my car and I went over there. She opened the door and I could clearly see a baby bump. I could not believe it. She invited me in and explained that her and my boyfriend had been seeing each other for a few months, and that he wanted her to have an abortion, but she didn't want to. She also told me that he threatened her. She also told me that meeting him was the worst thing that ever happened to her. That's when I started getting phone calls from my boyfriend. He started sending me messages asking me where I am, but I had turned off my location so he couldn't see. I finally answered the phone, and when I told him where I was, he hung up on me. When I got home, he was there waiting for me. He denied everything. He said that John made all of that up and that the girl was helping him, and that they were only setting out to break us up. He's basically forcing me to stay with him. So now we're all waiting for the baby to be born to get a paternity test. Also, John and I have been hooking up on the regular. I know that's not good. What do you guys think I should do? Story time about how my blind date hid in my closet for 8 hours. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I'm in my late 20s and I've been looking for a boyfriend for years now. I started using dating apps, but none of that worked. Recently, my boyfriend started dating this really cool guy. He told me he had a really good friend and that he thought they should set me up. Of course, I had never met this guy before. I didn't know if he had social media. I didn't know anything about him. My sister and her boyfriend set up the whole thing. Oh yeah, and my sister told me that he was a doctor, he owned a boat, and loved golfing. So I got ready for the date and I showed up to the restaurant. Right away, he comes over and says hi to me. He knew that I would be wearing a pink shirt. We sat down to eat and we basically stood at the restaurant for 3 hours just talking and having fun. We talked about a bunch of stuff, and towards the end of the date, he gave me a kiss and asked me out again. I said yes. We said goodbye and I went home. Then I decided to go get ice cream and I went back home. I watched some TV, went to sleep. The next morning, I'm getting ready. I open my closet door and he jumps out. Part 2 is up. This guy had been hiding in my closet for 8 hours watching me sleep and change. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Ran into my living room and I asked him what he was doing. He said that he really liked me and that he just wanted to spend some time with me and he didn't know how to tell me, so he decided to come over to my place when I went to the supermarket the night before. I asked him how he got in and he said he came in through a window. I looked at my window and it was wide open. Remember I said I went to the supermarket in part 1? That's when he decided to come into my apartment. By the way, at this point I had just finished showering and I was in my towel. My knees started shaking and I was so scared. I asked him why he hid in my closet for 8 hours. He said it wasn't a big deal and that he thought I wouldn't see him. Then he actually said that he was excited for our second date. He started walking toward me and I told him to stay away. But then he started getting really angry. So I decided to play it off and act like everything was cool just so that I could get out of my apartment safely. I stayed with him in my apartment for 2 hours. Then I pretended I wanted to go get breakfast together. But then he lunged at me and tried to kiss me. Part 3 is he lunges at me and tries to kiss me. I pushed him away, but then he tried again. I ran to the door, unlocked it, and ran to my neighbor's house. I could feel him right behind me the whole time. He was asking me to calm down while I was running away. Did he actually think I was gonna be flattered that he was hiding in my closet for 8 hours while I slept? Luckily, my neighbor opened the door right away. He let me in, but my blind date tried to pretend that we were together and that we had just gotten into a fight. My neighbor knew better because he knew my situation. He locked the door and then we called the cops. It turns out he went to the same gym I did. My sister's boyfriend goes to the same gym. So he asked my sister's boyfriend to set us up, even though they actually didn't know each other. The cops looked for him but couldn't find him. I haven't seen him since. Story time about how my entire family found out I had an OnlyFans. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My family is super strict on me. My dad was so strict. I couldn't even have girlfriends growing up. Like, I couldn't have kids over. I couldn't go to anyone's house. It was the worst. Daddy dearest would even check my emails and my cell phone every single day. So when I turned 18, I moved the heck out of that house. So of course I needed to earn money, and I found out that one of my friends had an OnlyFans and she was trying to convince me to use it so that I could sign up with her link. Part of me just wanted to really piss off my dad, so I signed up. And guess what? Within a week, I had about 60 followers charging $9 a month. You do the math. See, my dad was paying for my phone bill and everything at the time, so I wanted to become financially independent, and I was able to do it. So I tell my dad I don't need his financial help anymore, and he starts asking questions, but I wasn't giving him any information. Later on that night, my phone starts acting weird. Go to part 2. That's when I realized that my phone had been hacked. Guess what? It was Daddy Dearest. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Before I realized my dad had hacked my phone, he called me and asked me to come over. But he had a really bad attitude, so I was like, what the heck is going on? When I get to my parents' house, both my parents are sitting on the couch waiting for me. And that's when my dad tells me that he knows that I'm on OnlyFans. He tells me I'm a whore and that I'm a slut, and that I've disgraced the entire family. My mom just stayed quiet the entire time, but I definitely kept my cool. Once my dad was finished insulting me, I calmly told him that I was an adult and that he had no right to intervene into my life. I asked him how he found out, and then he showed me his cell phone. He somehow had access to everything in my phone. I was so disgusted. That's when my mom gets up from the couch, gives me a hug, hug and tells me that she's proud of me. She said she didn't agree with me having OnlyFans, but that she was happy I was turning into an adult. Then the craziest thing happens. The doorbell rings, and guess who it is? Part 3 is up. When I open the door, it's my aunt, my uncle, and my cousins. My father literally called the entire family because I had an OnlyFans. As soon as my aunt sees me, she bursts into tears. I ran away from my parents' house and went straight to my apartment. Then my cousin told me they were planning on having an intervention. Now I'm making $5,000 on OnlyFans. XOXO, OnlyFans.
Had to leave, I just couldn't bear to stay. Nothing's back in its place for me anyway. I wanna see what's hiding across the sea. If there is something out there for me. Take a train, ride a cab, catch a flight. Travel daytime into the night. All alone, grab a backpack and light. That's what life should be all about.
Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend she is embarrassing? I, 37 male, have been dating my girlfriend, 21 female, for about 4 months, and it's going great. She's super fun and outgoing, and I love that about her. My only issue in our relationship is how she presents herself. She's got all these piercings and tattoos, wears a lot of makeup, and pretty revealing clothing. The other day, it was my birthday, and I invited her to go out for drinks with my friends and she could meet some friends that she hasn't met before. I asked her to tone down her makeup and outfits a little, and she said yes she would. Later that evening, she meets us at the bar and she's wearing a tight little flower dress that shows off all of her tattoos, these black high heels and dark red lipstick, and had those big eyeliner wings, and she still had all her facial piercings in. All my friends stared at her. I ignored it and tried to have a nice time, but I could tell my friends were laughing at her and judging me. When she came over later that night, she asked why I seemed so distant and angry. I told her that she said she would tone down her outfits when meeting my friends, and she couldn't even do that for me on my birthday. She had embarrassed me in front of friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. She apologized and she said she thought she looked pretty and I would like the outfit. She went to bed and left in the morning and hasn't returned my calls. My mum thinks I'm not the asshole, but should have just left it alone. Am I the asshole? Now to the comments. You're the asshole, obviously. Maybe everyone is staring because you are dating a girl that is 16 years younger than you. I am increasingly convinced we need some kind of class or PSA for young women. Girl, he isn't with you because you're mature for your age and not like the other girls. He's with you because he's still mentally 21 himself. Women his age won't tolerate him, and younger women are typically more malleable, and he's a control freak like OP. Let's not blame this one on the woman. It's the guys who need to learn to go for people their age instead of grooming these poor girls. See, I think you're both right. Like, yes, it's definitely not the woman's fault because someone 10 plus years her senior decided to go after her, but being aware of the true intentions will also make it harder for the older creep to be able to groom her. You're the asshole, and so are your friends. I hope she realizes she can do better. Date women your own age, bro. So I'll say it. I don't think the friends were laughing at the girlfriend for how she looked. I think they were laughing at the fact that OP was dating someone young enough to be his daughter. I completely agree. If they had never met her before, he might have been completely lying about her in either appearance or the she's super mature for her age BS. They are laughing at his obvious midlife crisis. Man pushing 40 dates beautiful, confident, alt-style 21-year-old. Never heard that before. Massive, you're the asshole. If you're embarrassed by the way she looks, why are you dating her? There are plenty of people who wouldn't be ashamed to be seen with her, and she deserves someone like that. Not someone nearly twice her age who is going to shame her. She doesn't need 2 dads. This has to be a joke, right? You're the asshole, and in no way will any sane person agree with you. You are dating a girl who has tattoos, piercings, and likes to wear makeup, but you're embarrassed by it. Do you think you're going to change her? I don't expect her to return your phone calls. Your friends can F off for judging her too, by the way. And now on to the update. She texted me and said that we're over and she'll be getting her stuff from my apartment. Her and her older brother will be over in an hour. And now in the comments. Oh man, I love happy endings. Quote, her dad's a major asshole who hates me and thinks we should break up. No daddy issues, but a shitty dad. Gee, I wonder why. Sounds like a great dad to me. He knew. Exactly. If her relationship with her dad is good and her dad hates you, guess which one of you is likely to be the asshole here? But his mommy doesn't think he's the asshole. Gotta love a 21-year-old doing what she wants with confidence and a 37-year-old whining, "Mommy said I was right." I wonder if the friends were really judging her outfit or if they didn't realize how much younger she was and were actually judging him. In the comments, he said he asked her to cover up her anti-cop tattoo because his best friend was a cop. But yeah, probably also that. I'm assuming ACAB. Yes, with a possum. But he mentioned sometimes that saying gets deleted, so I didn't put it. Wait, what's the ACAB and possum connection? Possums are kinda popular on left-wing internet spaces. For some people, like anarchists and crust punks, they have some deeper meaning. But I think most people just like that they are cute and kind of unorthodox, and don't have any real connection. I mean, this woman didn't change her entire appearance in 4 months. She likely didn't have the style of a 65-year-old librarian when they met. He must have liked it at least a little. Control freaks confuse me. They must actually look at someone and think, yup, she has the body type I like, she can change everything else. It's not like that. He likes pierced, tattered women in tight, short clothes. He just doesn't want his family and friends to know that is his taste because he feels it reflects poorly on him. It's like the chubby chasers who only date curvy women but refuse to take them out in public. As someone who comes from a family that's basic and have never really been around people with unique tastes, dating my current partner had me nervous. She had pretty cool and wild outfits and hairstyles, and I felt embarrassed at first. I had to kick myself in the ass hard to realize that I'm dating her because I like her style and I shouldn't be afraid of having her around my family. Couple years later, and it's my favorite thing about her. I encourage all of her outfits no matter where we go, including around my family. Our next post is titled, "I gave my friend power of attorney and now I want it back, but he's making it difficult." Long story short, my friend wants to go to law school but has no experience. He asked if he could be my power of attorney to get some experience, and I agreed because I wanted to help him out. But I'm not happy with what he's doing and I can't figure out how to make him stop. When we were out for drinks with friends one time, he saw the debit card that I was using and said that it was a bad bank. Next thing I know, I'm trying to use the card and it's not working. Turns out he pulled all my money out, closed the account, and opened a new one with a different bank plus a credit card with the bank. When he gave me the new cards, I explained that I liked the old bank because they have branches in my home state that I can use when I go home for summer from school. The new bank doesn't. I also really don't believe in credit cards and never wanted one. I have enough student loan debt anyway. But he said this bank was better and credit cards make more sense and he was doing me a favor. He also requested all my medical records from the student health center and let it slip in front of friends that I'm taking an antidepressant. A girl that I like in our group doesn't believe in them and now she's really not talking to me anymore. I've brought up to him that I'm kind of not happy with this arrangement, but he said that he needs the power of attorney for a few more months to show his law school applications that he has relevant experience, especially if he can't get a legal job this summer between our junior and senior years. I'm having car trouble, and he keeps trying to involve himself in the repair process and bully the mechanic, and it makes me super uncomfortable, but I don't want to hurt his chances at law school. I'm in California. Now in the comments, he is scamming you. Go to a lawyer now. There is no way that he can make it hard for you to get him out. Get his POA status revoked and go over everything he had access to. Lord only knows what else he may have been screwing with. This dude is not your friend. If there is any way to, and make sure you ask a lawyer about this, I would see if charges could be brought up against them. You don't need experience effing with your friends to get into law school. I'd tell him he's done immediately, and if he doesn't respond to that, then send a certified letter stating the same. Once he receives that, anything he does could be criminal. That should get this asshole's attention. As for the medication, tell this idiot to read up on privacy laws and fiduciary responsibility. He will need to understand that well as an attorney. And now on to the update. About a week after my original post, I talked with my friend and said that I appreciated all his help, but it was getting to be a hassle, and I'd prefer to manage my own stuff from here on out. He was disappointed, but understood. All in all, it was a mixed experience. There were some positives. He was more aggressive negotiating with the mechanic than I would have liked, but in the end, the mechanic knocked $200 off the bill. Also, I've come around to like the credit card that he opened for me. I'm going to be able to use the points to get a free flight home next semester. There were some negatives too. He discovered that 2 of the classes that I needed to graduate were being offered at the nearby community college this semester, so he signed me up to try and save me some money. But when he requested that, my current school sent transcripts to the community college. That almost made me lose a scholarship with my actual school. I had to basically beg and plead with the financial aid office, but in the end, it all worked out. Also, that girl who I liked who found out that I'm on antidepressants tried to cause some drama in our friend group about me, but I'm over it now. People were pretty critical in the previous post and kept saying that I was being scammed, but that's not at all what happened. He just needed some experience to put on his applications. Also, lots of people said this wouldn't help with law schools, but I'm not pre-law, so I don't know one way or another. I signed a letter of reference for him because I'm not going to stand in the way of his dreams, and on the whole, he helped by being my power of attorney. Now in the comments, OP never understood what power of attorney means or believed any of the replies. Some would wonder why he posted if he was going to just ignore everyone. I think he was hoping people would reassure him that this was fine and normal so that he wouldn't have to confront the friend. At least he dodged a massive bullet by blowing his chances with the girl he was into. She sounded like a nightmare, and OP sounded like the type of guy to excuse all of her terrible behavior if they had ever gotten together. Bullet dodged, but it's still frankly disturbing to think that his friend got access to his medical records and then shared that information. Yikes. Even if this time it wasn't a scam per se, OP is definitely gonna get scammed at some point. I'm literally wondering how many years until OP finds out what really went down. Yep, OP doesn't have any sense at all. I was thinking that maybe OP is actually a bit simple. Like some people with lower IQ do get into university and college because they study and remember things well, but don't really have that much common sense. And I say this as a special ed teacher. OP reminds me of some of my students. They do well in school, but believe everything other people tell them and are unbelievably naive. Our next post is titled, "Am I the asshole for telling my fiancé I won't proceed with our wedding if he insists on inviting his female friend?" So my 29 female, fiancé, 32 male, has a female best friend since childhood. Now, I'm not the kind of person who gets jealous over my partner being friends with the opposite gender. I'm bisexual, so it wouldn't be rational of me to have some weird expectations like this. Plus, my fiancé has many female friends as a straight guy, and I have friends of both genders as well. What bothers me here is not the gender of the friend, but whether or not they are able to respect boundaries. So I'd make the same small talk if the friend in question was a male. So to the point, his female best friend Rachel has always been in competition with me regarding on who's more important and a bigger priority to my fiancé. At first, my fiancé failed to stand up to her and set boundaries, but after a small break we had, and after we reconciled, he realized the importance of boundaries and set hard boundaries with her. I know that whenever she sees me or hears about me, she is not happy, but we act kind to each other despite our actual feelings. This situation, by the way, has been rolling out for the past 5 years that I've been with my fiancé. When he proposed, Rachel didn't congratulate us at all, and completely overlooked our entire engagement and kept referring to me as my fiancé's girlfriend. My fiancé kept correcting her each time, even telling her how she's not funny or quirky doing this, she's just disrespectful. And after a certain point, she stopped. Now that we are planning our wedding, we picked out some groomsmen and bridesmaids, and my fiancé has his female friend as one of his groomsmen, a groomswoman. After my fiancé asked her to join that role, she texted me a lengthy paragraph, which, to sum it up, said, "Just so you know, your fiancé and I are still each other's priority. You may marry him and have kids with him, share a house with him, but right now he picked me as a groomswoman, knowing how that would bother you because he cares about not hurting my feelings more than your feelings. You can't easily ruin friendships like that. Just stay in your lane and accept your place. You might be his wife, but I'm his friend, and I'm not going anywhere. Make peace with it, and who knows, soon enough we might get along." I showed my fiancé, and he said that he'll deal with her, and I shouldn't worry. I told him that I have had enough, and that the only solution I'm accepting is proper consequences for her actions. That means she is either dropped as a groomswoman or uninvited. He makes the call for which one it will be, but I'm tired of his best friend not having real consequences for her actions and getting her way. I won't trust him enough to proceed with our wedding if he doesn't set clear limits and make his friend face the consequences of her behavior. He said what I'm doing is very unfair because he is not responsible for her actions, and feels like I'm putting unnecessary responsibility and pressure on him. Am I the asshole? And now in the comments, not the asshole, but Rachel wasn't wrong when she said he cared more about her feelings than yours. Please consider if you want to be the second most important person in your marriage. Not the asshole. You are not being remotely unfair. The only response to that text is him telling her to get the F out. Not just in regards to the wedding, to his entire life. If someone had sent something half as bad to my husband, I would let them know they were, for all intents and purposes, dead to me. I would not marry this man unless he takes appropriate action. This is insanity. Exactly right. If a friend of mine spoke to my husband like that, they would be instantly out of my life. Yes, indeed. OP is not the asshole. However, if fiancé dumps Rachel, uninvites her to wedding, or demotes her from groomswoman, she will ratchet it up and do who knows what. She ain't given up without a major fight. She will try anything to break you two up and try to make you miserable. Also, likely spread many rumors. Be aware. Edit to add, might want some security for the wedding and reception if there is even a remote possibility of Rachel doing some sabotage. Beware. Not the asshole. If your fiancé's response to Rachel is anything other than, "What the hell is wrong with you, and I don't want you in my wedding or my life until you apologize to my future wife and realize that she is my priority from now on," then I think you are right to be concerned that he does indeed care more about her feelings than yours. She is way out of her lane sending you a message like that. Like, who the hell does that? Your fiancé might not be responsible for her behavior, but he is responsible for setting boundaries with his friends around how they treat you, and boundaries mean nothing without consequences. You are right to expect him to set the tone now for what he will allow Rachel to get away with, and to refuse to get married until he shows that you are truly his priority, even when it puts him in the middle of a conflict. And now on to the update. So this update probably came sooner than I expected, and maybe than you expected as well. While I had this post up, I was sitting next to my fiancé. I told him that I don't want to ask feedback from family and friends, and I don't want them involved in our drama, so I would rather get some unbiased feedback here. He's been reading some of the responses, and while at first he was very defensive over his actions, he has just now started realizing on how he has to reflect on this a bit more. I also explained to him once again in detail on why what I think Rachel is doing is bad and how it might destroy not just our relationship, but any future relationship he might get, even after we break up, because no person would be willing to stand for that disrespect. We are having a chat about it now, and he is thinking of distancing himself from Rachel. Edit 2, for the record, he decided to uninvite her from the wedding completely and later distance himself from her. Now in the comments, I get the feeling that this is not actually concluded until Rachel finds out and the wedding is over. Shit's gonna go down. OP had a comment that fiancé was calling Rachel to tell her, but she wouldn't pick up, so he texted her to say that she was no longer invited. Her response was, "I'm at work, I'll call later." Yup, this crap isn't over. I feel like that crap is going to involve law enforcement and the fire department, because Rachel doesn't seem sane nor rational to me. My faith in this marriage is not the least bit restored. Rachel literally just spelled out her plan like a Bond villain. The man is either utterly spineless or really does want Rachel as a backup side piece. Either way, not marriage material. It's kinda weird that he didn't uninvite her immediately after seeing that text. She wasn't just being rude and deeply disrespectful to OP, but to him too. It's because he wants to do nothing. He wants to hope that it goes away. He likes the attention. He likes having Rachel on his hook, an emergency escape if you will. And Rachel was the one that did the crazy thing, but she isn't asking him to confront an awkward situation, she's creating it, but not making him do anything about it. So his now wife gets the blame because she's making him do something. And that's where I'm going to end this one today, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, let me know what you thought of it down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.